Chapter 61. Shock. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Chapter 61. Shock. Lu Sanyang shouted with all her might. She said to Lu Yinyang that Lu Shun was not a good person and that she shouldn't marry him. However, Lu Yinyang did not seem to hear her and still got married happily. Lu Shun held her hand and walked into the darkness. When Lu Sanyang woke up, she was covered in sweat. Looking out of the window, the sky was still not bright. Lu Sanyang recalled her dream from last night and was no longer sleepy. In her dream, Lu Yinyang married Lu Shun and disappeared into the darkness. Lu Sanyang's mood was affected. After she was reborn, she had had a few dreams and they were all omens that something bad was about to happen. Because of that, Lu Sanyang felt a little depressed. During the day, she heard some noises outside the door. Lu Sanyang was curious. She opened the door to find a group of people in red and green stopping at Lu Yinyang's house, carrying a few large boxes. The woman in the lead was wearing heavy makeup and smiling. A big red flower by her ear symbolized her status as a matchmaker. Lu Sanyang closed the door. She still couldn't forget the scene she saw in her dream. She had a feeling that once Lu Yinyang married Lu Shun, she would walk into the darkness just like in her dream. In her previous life, she did not know much about Lu Yinyang. She only knew that after Lu Yinyang married the butcher in Ling County, she led a good life. Every time Lu Yinyang returned home, she would bring back a lot of gifts. This made Madame Bai very proud. It was precisely because of this that Madame Wei was quite angry. After all, in Madame Wei's eyes, her daughter was much better than Lu Yinyang, but she still stayed single all her life. Lu Sanyang thought for a moment and prepared to go out. Lu Shun was not a good person. Lu Sanyang did not want Lu Yinyang to marry him. She wanted to help her marry the guy in her previous life. Madame Wei worked as a chef at the Yellow Crane restaurant. Lu Sanyang used to go there often. After she turned 14 years old, Madame Wei stopped her from going out too much. When a girl was at the age for marriage, she would have to stay at home to wait for her future husband and would seldom appear in public. Business at Yellow Crane restaurant was as good as ever. When Lu Sanyang entered, a waiter came up to her. "Miss, what do you want to eat?" Lu Sanyang smiled. "I'm here to look for Chef Wei. I'm her daughter." The waiter looked at Lu Sanyang and smiled. "Okay, I'll call her for you immediately." Madame Wei had been a chef at the Yellow Crane restaurant for more than 10 years. Her culinary skills were superb, and now her main job was experimenting with new dishes. Madame Wei came out of the kitchen and pulled Lu Sanyang upstairs. She asked the waiter to make a pot of tea. After entering the private room and sitting down, Madame Wei asked immediately, "What's wrong?" Lu Sanyang told Madame Wei about Lu Yinyang's marriage. Madame Wei frowned. "Sanyang, I know you're kind, but," Madame Wei really didn't want to look for Madame Bai. She couldn't stand Madame Bai's sarcastic way of talking and Madame Bai couldn't stand her arrogance. However, before Madame Wei could finish speaking, Lu Sanyang grabbed her hand and shook it. "Mother, Lu Shun is not a good person. If Yinyang marries him, her life will be ruined." Madame Wei looked at Lu Sanyang and asked solemnly. "Sanyang, why did you say that Lu Shun is not a good person?" Lu Sanyang said, "Mother, do you still remember what happened in March at Lu Cheng's house?" Madame Wei nodded. Of course she remembered. She would never forget it for the rest of her life. If the magistrate didn't find the evidence to prove her innocence, she would probably still be in jail. Lu Sanyang told Madame Wei seriously, "Mother, originally, the case would have been solved after the coroner did the autopsy, but the mortuary suddenly burnt down. At that time, Lu Cheng's family accused father of bribing the coroner. The situation was very serious at that time, and the one who caused all this was Lu Shun. He was the one who asked Lu Cheng to burn the mortuary. I know this because I read Lu Cheng's mind." Moreover, it was also Lu Shun who instigated Lu Cheng to kill his wife. Madame Wei's expression changed. Sun Yang, are you saying that Lu Shun was the mastermind behind it all? Madame Wei looked at Lu Sanyang in disbelief, but judging from the genuine look on Sanyang's face, she knew that what her daughter said was true. It was hard to imagine how vicious a person had to be to commit those crimes and not feel any guilt. Back then, she rejected Lu Shun's proposal to marry her daughter because he was Lu Cheng's cousin. However, she did not expect Lu Shun to be such a person. Lu Sanyang nodded. Mother, please persuade third aunt to turn down the marriage for her daughter. Madame Wei's expression was a little solemn. She reached out and touched Lu Sanyang's hair. Sanyang, I'll try. You're really a kind girl. How could God bear to see such a good girl leading the rest of her life alone? Lu Sanyang smiled. She had heard Madame Wei's worry. If she had the chance, she would be willing to marry. She would try to leave no regrets in this life. After Madame Wei agreed, Lu Sanyang left the Yellow Crane restaurant and went home. Lu Sanyang felt that someone was following her, but when she turned around, she could not see anyone. When they reached Willow Alley, the sound of footsteps suddenly quickened. Lu Sanyang was shocked by the sudden approaching footsteps. She turned around and saw Lu Shun dressed in white. Lu Shun was dressed like a scholar. His white clothes made him look handsome and elegant. If she did not know who he actually was, Lu Shun would look exactly like the husband Lu Sanyang wanted. Lu Shun smiled at her and cupped his hands. Miss Lu. Lu Sanyang looked at Lu Shun's smile and felt a chill run down her spine. Even though Lu Shun was smiling, and his smile was very gentle, Lu Sanyang could still feel the malice emanating from his body. The darkness hidden in his eyes was like a demon as he looked at her covetously. Lu Sanyang did not want to talk to Lu Shun at all. She quickened her pace and wanted to go home as soon as possible. However, Lu Shun kept walking by her side. Lu Sanyang felt disgusted and started running. Lu Shun took a deep breath and narrowed his eyes as he watched Lu Sanyang run away. She smells really good. Chapter 62. If you want to live, stay away from her. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Chapter 62. If you want to live, stay away from her. Lu Sanyang ran to the door of her house and quickly opened it. She entered and closed the door. Leaning against the door, she took a deep breath. Lu Shun was an evil person. His words made Lu Sanyang shiver and she was extremely afraid. At the thought of Lu Yinyang marrying such a person, Lu Sanyang hoped that Madame Bai would listen to Madame Wei. Lu Shun passed by Lu Sanyang's house without stopping. With a smile on his face, he placed one hand behind his back. In this life, he had to have a taste of Lu Sanyang. Lu Shun came to Lu Yinyang's house. Matchmaker Su was beaming with smiles as she continued to praise. Madame Bai, you are really lucky to have such a good son. Law. He's so generous with the betrothal gift. He really cares about Yinyang. Madame Bai smiled like a blooming flower. When she had asked Matchmaker Su to match her daughter and Lu Shun, she didn't have much hope of it succeeding. But it turned out that Lu Shun agreed. Now that Lu Shun had become a scholar, his status and salary had taken a leap as well. Madame Bai was very satisfied with this marriage, so Matchmaker Su's flattery made her feel even happier. With a smiley face, she said, I have to thank Matchmaker Su. You helped my daughter put in a good word in front of Lu Shun. Matchmaker Su smiled. This is fate, they are destined to be together. All I did was deliver some messages. Lu Shun listened to the laughter and flattery from outside the door. He raised his hand and knocked. Matchmaker Su stood up and clapped her hands. Madame Bai, I think your future son. Law is here to greet you. Madame Bai hurriedly got up. Why is he here? Isn't he in the school and too busy to come? Lu Shun walked into the courtyard and bowed to Madame Bai. Mother in law. After sending the betrothal gift, the marriage was pretty much a done deal. All that was left was the date of the wedding. When Lu Shun bowed to Madame Bai, she was exhilarated. Tonight, Lu Yinyang made many dishes to treat her future husband, but she did not eat them together with them, as was the tradition. The betrothal gifts were in the courtyard. There were high-quality clothes and jewelry as well as 30 taels of silver. Lu Yinyang smiled happily. But now and then she could remember Lu Sanyang telling her that Lu Shun was not a good person. At the thought of this, Lu Yinyang couldn't help but wonder why Lu Sanyang thought so. What exactly happened? After all, Lu Shun had proposed to Lu Sanyang before, and it was Lu Sanyang who rejected him. If Lu Sanyang didn't refuse, she wouldn't have gotten this chance. What was it that made Lu Sanyang refuse him? Lu Yinyang felt a little sad. This marriage was really too good. If she missed it, she would never meet such a good man again. If she married a scholar, she could even become an official's wife in the future. Lu Shun looked gentle. How could such a man not be good? She wanted to use her lifetime of happiness to make Lu Sanyang believe that she had misjudged and given a great man to someone else. At night, the matchmaker and the others bade farewell happily. Lu Shun also stood up and left. He was slightly drunk. Madame Bai sent Lu Shun to the entrance of Willow Alley and said with a smile, "Take care." Lu Shun raised his hand without looking back. Why did he want to marry Lu Yinyang? It was entirely because he wanted to take revenge on Madame Wei for rejecting him. Madame Wei was a capable woman. In the Lu clan, people looked up to her. None of the other women were as capable as she was. After drinking, Lu Shun staggered home. Lu Sanyang's beautiful face appeared in his mind. In his opinion, a woman like Lu Sanyang was suitable to be a toy that he played with once in a while. Her skin was fair and smooth, and her figure. He had to get the woman who had been his dream for a lifetime. In his dream, Lu Sanyang had also rejected him. He did not know the reason, but he had been thinking about Lu Sanyang for his entire life. When Lu Sanyang was a girl, she was very gentle and beautiful. He had only seen Lu Sanyang once when she was in her 20s. After that, she entered his dreams almost every day. That gentle and beautiful woman with a slender waist had to be his. Lu Shun's vision suddenly went dark. With a shudder, all the thoughts in his mind disappeared. Before he could shout, he fainted. With a dark and expressionless face, Chu Yen dragged Lu Shun out of the street. After waking up from the faint, Lu Shun cursed in his mind. Damn it, who assaulted me behind my back again? However, he did not dare to make a sound. It was already dark, so Lu Shun could not see things clearly. However, under the moonlight, he could vaguely see a tall figure through the gap in the sack. Chu Yen looked at Lu Shun coldly. Scum, you finally woke up. It was good that Lu Shun had woken up because Chu Yen didn't like hitting people when they were unconscious. Lu Shun's heart skipped a beat when he heard this cold voice. He hastened to beg for mercy. Please, don't hit me. Chu Yen punched Lu Shun's thigh. Lu Shun subconsciously arched his body and let out an excruciating scream. He leaned close to Lu Shun's ear and said, "If you want to live, stay away from her." After saying that, Chu Yen stood up and left without looking back. Lu Shun screamed. Help, help. Hearing the threat, without thinking, Lu Shun knew for a fact who the man was. Chapter 63. He just wants you to feel pain. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Chapter 63. He just wants you to feel pain. Lu Shun did not expect Chu Yen to hit him. The punch hit his leg like a piece of iron. He felt that the flesh on his leg was about to be turned into meat paste. Lu Shun didn't know if Chu Yen did it on purpose, but he didn't break his bone. What would happen if that punch broke his bone? Lu Shun shuddered. He did not dare to think about it. He would definitely be crippled. Lu Shun didn't expect that Chu Yen had taken a fancy to Lu Sanyang as well. He was just a poor blacksmith covered in smelly sweat. How could he be worthy of Lu Sanyang? Lu Shun was angry and in pain. At the thought of Chu Yan's future identity, he hated him to the core. Lu Sanyang was his. He definitely wouldn't let Chu Yan take her away. If he had to, he would kill Lu Sanyang just so Chu Yan couldn't get her. If he couldn't have her, no one could. After obtaining the memories of his entire life in his dream, he was not afraid of Chu Yan. Lu Shun's scream had already attracted someone. The person took the sack off Lu Shun's head and said in surprise, "Mr. Lu, why are you here?" Lu Shun's face twisted in pain. "Someone was jealous of me and hit me." "Mr. Lu, did you see who attacked you?" Attacking a scholar was a crime. The scholar was knowledgeable. What if he injured his brain? Lu Shun was still so young. His future was definitely bright. Who was so bold to hit the scholar? Lu Shun pursed his lips. It was too dark. I didn't see who it was, but he was tall and very strong. At the thought of being hit by Chu Yan, Lu Shun was indignant. However, he did not say it was Chu Yan who hit him because he knew that it was useless. Without any evidence, there was nothing he could do to punish Chu Yan. It'd be hard to find the assailant if you didn't see him. This time, Lu Shun was pretty much beaten up for nothing. He broke out in cold sweat from the pain and said with difficulty, "Please send me to the clinic first." "Thank you." He just wanted to go to the clinic to get checked. He didn't want to end up being a cripple. Okay. They helped Lu Shun up and carried him to the clinic. When they arrived at the clinic, the rest of the people left. The doctor examined Lu Shun and was a little surprised. "Your injury," Lu Shun's face turned pale. "What's wrong?" "I can't become a cripple." Chu Yan was very strong. Although his punch did not hit the bone, it was no guarantee that it did not hurt the tendons on his leg. Lu Shun was a little nervous. The doctor shook his head. "It's fine. It's just a flesh wound. You'll recover after a few days of rest. It's just that you'll be in pain." Lu Shun was in disbelief. "I'm fine. But I'm in so much pain that I can't even walk." The doctor looked at Lu Shun and said, "Well, the person who injured you probably didn't want to really hurt you. He just wanted you to feel the pain." Lu Shun gritted his teeth, swearing to himself that he would make Chu Yan regret what he did. Lu Shun's eyes darkened. The doctor had already grabbed some medicine for him. "Take one every day." Lu Shun tried to move slightly and felt a piercing pain running through his body. Immediately, cold sweat broke out, and he did not dare to move at all. Eventually, he found someone to carry him back. Madame Wei agreed to Lu Sanyang's request, so she asked for a day's leave the next day. She went to see Madame Bai. Madame Bai opened the door and saw Madame Wei. Her smile was a little forced and her tone was cold. "What are you doing here?" Madame Wei glanced at Madame Bai. "I have something to tell you." Madame Bai curled her lips. "Come in and talk. I still have something to do." So, cut to the chase. Madame Wei did not enter the courtyard. "Then I'll get straight to the point. Lu Shun is not a good person. You need to reconsider your daughter's marriage." As soon as Madame Wei finished speaking, Madame Bai almost flew into a rage. She looked at Madame Wei, wanting to see jealousy or other expressions on her face. However, she was disappointed. Madame Wei was expressionless. Madame Bai calmed herself down. "What evidence do you have for saying that Lu Shun is not a good person? Don't tell me that you're unwilling to accept the fact that Inyang has a good marriage and Sanyang doesn't. You don't want my family to have what your family can't have, right?" The more Madame Bai thought about it, the more she felt that this was the case. How could Lu Shun be a bad person? He was knowledgeable and generous. He was also good-looking and gentle. Madame Wei must have been envious and wanted to destroy this marriage. Madame Bai's expression turned cold. Madame Wei looked at her and knew that she was overthinking. She said flatly, "You can't judge a book by its cover. Just think carefully." When Madame Wei thought of what Lu Sanyang said, her heart turned cold. Lu Shun was only in his early 20s, but he was as deceiving as an old fox. After doing a horrendous thing, he could still pretend nothing happened. This was what was terrifying. Madame Bai was furious. "What nonsense! I think you're just jealous. If Lu Shun marries a girl from another family, will you still tell them he's not a good person?" Madame Wei frowned. "I don't have that much time." She couldn't be bothered with people who wanted to push their daughter into the fire pit. Madame Bai snorted. "As expected. Bai Xiaolan, Madame Bai, I know that you helped my family few days ago. Yin Yang is also a member of the Lu clan. I can't watch you push her into the fire. Let me tell you the truth. The last time the mortuary burned down, it was Lu Shun who instructed Lu Cheng to do it. He even instructed Lu Cheng to kill his wife. What do you think will happen if your daughter marries that kind of man? Think carefully." After saying that, Madame Wei turned around and left. Madame Bai was stunned. She looked at Madame Wei's back and stammered. "Wei Shiyu, Madame Wei, stop. Explain what you just said." Madame Bai felt like her mind was in a mess. She was shocked by what Madame Wei had told her. The terrific son-in-law that she was satisfied with was actually an evil person. Madame Wei did not even turn around. It was not like she had plenty of time to waste. Anyway, she had already said what she needed to say. It was none of her business as to how Madame Bai decided. If Madame Bai still wanted to marry Lu Yinyang to Lu Shun in the end, she had no opinion on it. After all, everyone had the right to choose. Chapter 64. It's Her You are listening at novelfull.audio. Chapter 64. It's Her. A person rushed into Willow Alley and almost bumped into Madame Wei. Madame Wei frowned and wanted to scold him, but she thought better of it. Perhaps he really had something urgent to attend to. The person rushed into a house and said hurriedly, "Someone hit your son-in-law." The voice seemed to be coming from Madame Bai's house. Madame Wei did not pay much attention to it. She did not like to be nosy. Coupled with the previous incident, she became less enthusiastic about helping people. She knew very well that being nosy could lead to trouble. Before Madame Bai could close the door, someone ran into her courtyard. Madame Bai was shocked and was about to shout at the person when she said anxiously, "Auntie, something bad happened. Your son-in-law was beaten up and can't get out of bed." Madame Bai hurriedly asked. "Who beat up Shun? Is it serious?" The woman drew a deep breath and said, "I don't know who hit him. He said that it was a tall man who hit him. The man was so strong that he almost broke his leg. Now, he can't even get out of bed." Madame Bai cursed instantly. "Which wicked bastard hit my son-in-law? Doesn't he know that my son-in-law is a scholar? What if he's crippled?" The woman echoed. "That's right. Sigh. Hurry up and take a look. After all, he's engaged to your daughter." Madame Bai thought about it and agreed. She couldn't think about anything else at the moment. She closed the door and followed the woman. Lu Daolong and Lu Erlang were returning from work when they bumped into Madame Bai. Lu Erlang glanced at his eldest brother and asked silently, "Should we greet her?" Lu Daolong did not look at Lu Erlang and nodded at Madame Bai. "Third aunt." Lu Erlang smiled and called out, "Third aunt, why are you in such a hurry?" Madame Bai looked at Lu Daolong and Lu Erlang with suspicion. The two sons of the Lu family were both tall and strong. Lu Erlang was naughty, and Lu Dalong was calm. Madame Bai wasn't in the mood to talk to them. She ignored Lu Dalong and Lu Erlang and followed the woman. Lu Erlang was a little displeased. Brother, why is third aunt ignoring us? Lu Dalong was also confused. I don't know. Let's go home. Their families didn't have a good relationship to begin with, so they weren't expecting Madame Bai to treat them with enthusiasm in the first place. On the way home, Lu Erlang said happily, Sun Yang must have prepared some plum syrup and chilled it in the well. We can drink it when we reach back. Lu Erlang drooled at the thought of sour plum soup. He started to run. Brother, if you are late, there won't be any left for you to drink. Lu Dalong did not say anything. Since he was young, he was always told to protect his siblings. Lu Erlang rushed into the courtyard and took out a big wooden bucket from the well. As soon as he opened it, he took out a big bowl. He lifted the cloth covering it and salivated. Lu Erlang carried it to the kitchen to get a bowl. Madame Wei was washing the fish in the kitchen when Lu Erlang exclaimed. Mother, didn't you go to work today? Madame Wei replied snappishly. Can't I be at home? Am I an eyesore to you? Lu Erlang chuckled. Of course not. I'm happy to see you at home. He took a bowl and used a spoon to scoop up the plum syrup. He handed a bowl to Lu Dalong and drank it. Wow, it's delicious. What else is in it? Peanuts. Lu Dalong chewed slowly. Peanuts, walnuts, and sesame seeds. Delicious. Lu Erlang nodded. Yes, yes, yes. Big brother is right. Madame Wei threw the two cleaned fish into the basin and rubbed them with seasonings. She said, Dalong, you don't have to go to work in the afternoon. There will be guests at home later. Stay at home and help. Lu Erlang immediately said, Mom, I can help too. Madame Wei was so angry that she wanted to hit him. You go to work. Lu Erlang thought his mother was biased and felt unhappy. Lu Sanyang came in from outside and pulled Lu Erlang. Second brother, come out. Silly second brother. If she didn't explain it clearly, her silly second brother definitely wouldn't understand. Their mother was clearly asking him to work because the guest was their future sister. Law. Last time, there was an accident. This time, in order to ensure that nothing went wrong, Madame Wei stayed at home and invited the girl to come over. Lu Sanyang explained to Lu Erlang. Lu Erlang was stunned for a moment before he understood. I see. In that case, I'm relieved. After his brother got married, it'd be his turn soon. At the thought of this, Lu Erlang was elated. He also wanted to get married as soon as possible. In the afternoon, Lu Sanyang took the embroidery tools and went to Lu Jier's house. Lu Dalong wasn't so excited to meet this girl. He even wanted to refuse, but he did not know how to put it. Since meeting Tang An last time, Lu Dalong had always been thinking about her, so he wasn't so enthusiastic about this blind date. Madame Wei could tell that her son wasn't happy. She thought it was because Lu Dalong was hurt last time and comforted him. Dalong, the last time was an accident. I promise that the blind date this time will go without a hitch. Lu Dalong nodded absent-mindedly. Yes. He wasn't in the least angry about the accident last time. On the contrary, he was grateful because that accident happened. He just couldn't bring himself to say it. Not long after noon, someone knocked on the door. Madame Wei immediately went to open the door. When the door opened, an older woman was standing outside. Madame Wei smiled. Please come in. This must be the girl you mentioned. The older woman was known as Third Grandma Tang, an elder in Tang An's family. Tang An was still very thin. She was already very surprised. She lowered her head and grabbed the handkerchief in her hand uneasily. She did not expect the man whom third Madame Tang found for her was from this family. She followed third Madame Tang awkwardly. Third Madame Tang held Madame Wei's hand and smiled. Anan is a good girl, but her life is a bit unfortunate. Chapter 65. A Bag with Silver. You are listening at NovelFull.audio. Chapter 65. A bag with silver. If this blind date failed, Tangyan would be sold to a man in his 30s for 5 taels by her aunt. Third Madame Tang had asked around. That family was not good. However, third Madame Tang was not sure if it would work this time. After all, Tangyan had a younger brother and was very weak. The Lu family was quite well off and probably didn't need Tangyan to work. But it was still a question if Madame Wei would like her to be her daughter. In law. As third Madame Tang spoke, she observed Madame Wei's expression. Madame Wei smiled. Come in and sit down. Third Madame Tang tugged her sleeve. Anan, look up. Tangyan bit his lip and looked up at Madame Wei nervously. Hello, Auntie Wei. My name is Tangyan. Clunk. The sound of a heavy object falling to the ground attracted their attention. Lu Dalong was struck dumb at what he saw. A clang brought him back to his senses and he realized that he had lost his composure. He immediately picked up the wood on the ground and walked towards the backyard. When no one was looking, he smiled and blushed. It was actually her. The person he was blind dating with was actually her. In an instant, his mood improved and Lu Dalong felt much lighter when he walked. Tangyan was as shocked as Lu Dalong. She did not expect her blind date to be Lu Dalong. After missing the previous blind date, Tangyan no longer had any hope. She came here, prepared to be made a fool of. However, when she saw Lu Dalong, she was surprised and had a mixed feeling. That day on the street, she was at a loss and helpless. Lu Dalong reached out to help. Ignoring her rejection, he carried Tang Yuan to his house. His tall and strong figure left an indelible impression on Tangyan. After he sent them home that day, Tangyan heard her brother whisper, saying that he wished Lu Dalong to be his brother. In law. Tangyan reprimanded Tang Yuan and told him not to spout nonsense. Tang Yuan, who never talked back, replied stubbornly that Lu Dalong was tall and strong and could definitely protect her. Tangyan had confused feelings. Would he like her? Third Madame Tang chatted with Madame Wei for a while. Madame Wei brought out a fish and some sugar and handed them to Tangyan. I heard that you have a brother at home. Take these back to nourish his body. Tangyan lowered her head and refused to take them. Auntie Wei, there's no need. Madame Wei stuffed the things into Tang Yan's hand and patted her hand. Take them. Third Madame Tang smiled. Madame Wei was very friendly and didn't seem to dislike Tang Yan. She smiled. Anan, take it. You can't reject an elder's kindness. Tang Yan was left with no choice but accept the gift. Third Madame Tang then left with Tang Yan. Although Lu Dalong looked like he didn't care, he had been paying attention to the conversation in the courtyard. As soon as they left, he put down his work and looked at Madame Wei nervously. Mother. Madame Wei looked at Lu Dalong and suddenly felt that her son had grown up and become a man. Madame Wei smiled. Let's talk inside. After returning to the house and sitting down, Madame Wei asked Lu Dalong to sit next to her. Madame Wei touched Lu Dalong's head and looked at him gently. Dalong, do you like that girl? Lu Dalong smiled. I'll listen to Mom. Madame Wei smiled. You're a good child. You've always been good and sensible since you were young, unlike Erlang. Lu Dalong listened silently. He always knew that his mother loved her children dearly. Tang Yan is a good girl. She's kind-hearted and sensible. If you don't have any objections, I'll start talking about marriage with third Madame Tang. Madame Wei wanted to find a sensible wife for Lu Dalong so that the family would be more harmonious in the future. Lu Dalong nodded. Madame Wei didn't want her son to regret in the future, so she said again, Dalong, though I want to find you a sensible wife, I won't thrust one upon you. It depends on what you like. Tangyan is thin and weak. I'm afraid you won't like her. Lu Dalong smiled and said awkwardly, Mother, actually, I met her last time. She's poor, but we can take good care of her. Madame Wei was stunned. Last time. Lu Dalong told Madame Wei about what happened earlier. Madame Wei smiled. It seems like you two are fated. Lu Dalong was also happy. After seeing that it was Tangyan, he was relieved and even started thinking about their future. He had agreed, but what about Tangyan? Madame Wei smiled. Don't worry, it will work out. Lu Dalong was already 17 years old. Now that he had a girl he liked, after he turned 18 years old, the family would start preparing for the wedding. It didn't matter if Tangyan was thin and weak. When she married him, they would take care of her. After Lu Dalong's marriage was settled, Lu Erlang's marriage would be on the agenda. After that, it would be Lu Sanyang's turn. After her 3 children were married, Madame Wei would be relieved. Lu Dalong touched his head. Mother, thank you. Madame Wei was extremely happy. At night, when the family was eating together, Lu Erlang couldn't help but ask. Mother, how did the blind date go? Madame Wei said sheepishly, You really love to gossip, don't you? Lu Erlang chuckled. I just want to know who my future sister-in-law is. It hasn't been decided yet. You'll know when it is decided. Madame Wei picked up a piece of food for Lu Erlang. Eat it. Even food can't stop your mouth. Lu Sanyang smiled. Hearing Madame Wei's thoughts, she knew that the blind date was successful. As long as Big Brother had no objections, there would be no problem. And Big Brother liked Tangyan a lot. Knock, knock, knock. There was a knock on the door. Lu Erlang got up to open it. After a while, Lu Erlang came in with a money bag in his hand. He looked a little surprised. Mom, this is all silver, Madame Wei frowned. Madame Wei took the money bag and asked, Who gave it to you? There was really silver inside. Lu Erlang looked at Lu Sanyang. He said that his name is Lin Zheng and that this is what Sanyang deserves. He said that Magistrate Wei is grateful to Sanyang but he is too busy to come. Then Lin Zheng thrust this bag to me and left. Chapter 66. Arrogant Woman, Part 1, you are listening at novelfull.audio. Chapter 66. Arrogant Woman, Part 1, Madame Wei really wanted to return the money. Her family did not need it. However, Lu Sanyang smiled and said, Mother, take it. Even if you want to return it, Magistrate Wei won't take it back. Madame Wei felt complicated. She kept feeling that if she took this bag of silver, her daughter would have to take the path as a psychic. Finally, Mr. Lu said, Take it. Lu Erlang seemed to understand something and asked foolishly. Mother, does it mean that from now on Sanyang will need to dress like a Taoist? Does she have to make a Taoist priest robe for herself? Lu Dalong really wanted to beat his silly brother to shut him up. Madame Wei had already picked up her chopsticks and dragged Lu Erlang out by his ears. Lu Erlang finally realized what was going on. Mom, sorry, I shouldn't have said that. Mr. Lu sighed. Lu Sanyang smiled. Father, I'm done eating. I'll go back to my room first. Lu Sanyang knew that it would take some time for her parents and family to accept it. Lu Dalong did not say anything, but he did not feel good either. He looked at his silent father and wanted to comfort him, but he did not know how. Mr. Lu sighed deeply and no longer had the appetite to eat. At night, Lu Sanyang slept very late. In the middle of the night, the world fell silent. Lu Sanyang closed her eyes and slept. Before long, she was sound asleep. She had a dream. In the dream, Madame Wei returned home angrily. Seeing how angry she was, Lu Sanyang immediately wanted to comfort her. Madame Wei cried in anger. My daughter is not arrogant. My daughter is a good girl. Madame Wei could not continue and sobbed. Lu Sanyang was like a passerby. She watched Lu Daolong and Lu Erlang fight with others outside because they accused Lu Sanyang of a poor girl wanting to climb up the social ladder by marrying a rich man. They talked and laughed at her. Lu Daolong and Lu Erlang got into a fight with them, so people said that the Lu family was just a bunch of bad people. When Lu Sanyang woke up, the uncomfortable feeling did not dissipate. She had a strong feeling that what happened in the dream had already begun to happen. She heard Madame Wei opening the door and leaving for work. Not long after, Mr. Lu, Lu Daolong, and Lu Erlang also went out one after another. None of them came to call Lu Sanyang. Lu Sanyang cried silently for a while. She had been like this since she was young. Doted on by her entire family, she never needed to work. Lu Sanyang felt a little dejected. Was this her punishment? She was loved by her parents and brothers, so she was destined to lose something. Lu Sanyang quickly got up. After washing up, she prepared to go out and buy some threads. She had survived in her previous life, so there was no reason why she couldn't survive this life. If she really couldn't get married, so be it. Lu Sanyang was ready to leave when someone knocked on the door. Lu Sanyang was puzzled. Who was it? She went to open the door and saw Lu Yinyang outside. Lu Sanyang smiled. Yinyang, what brought you here? Lu Yinyang looked at Lu Sanyang and did not enter the courtyard. She looked at Lu Sanyang coldly. Sanyang, do you hate me that much? Why did you get your brother to hit Lu Shun? Why? Can't I have what you don't want? Lu Sanyang was stunned for a moment before she realized what Lu Yinyang was saying. Lu Sanyang grabbed Lu Yinyang's hand and felt her complicated and angry emotions. Lu Sanyang instantly understood why Lu Yinyang came to look for her. Lu Sanyang looked at Lu Yinyang and said seriously, Yinyang, I won't do that. I've said it before, Lu Shun is not a good person. If you don't believe me, I have no choice. My eldest brother and second brother have nothing to do with Lu Shun, let alone break his legs. Lu Yinyang retracted her hand. You liar. If it wasn't your brother who did it, how would you know that Lu Shun's legs were almost broken? I haven't told you yet. Lu Sanyang frowned. Before she could explain, Lu Yinyang looked at her and said coldly, Sanyang, I'll prove to you that you've misjudged Lu Shun. Just you wait. After saying that, Lu Yinyang turned around and ran. Lu Yinyang felt terrible. She liked to be friends with Lu Sanyang and couldn't stand her life being ruined by Lu Shun. Lu Sanyang looked at Lu Yinyang's departing figure. She opened her mouth and wanted to call out to stop her, but she did not. Because this scene reminded her of her dream. It was daytime, but she saw Lu Yinyang walking towards the darkness step by step. Lu Sanyang retracted her gaze. The moment she touched Lu Yinyang, she knew that Lu Shun had been beaten up and his legs were almost broken. She did not know who did it, and Lu Yinyang did not know either, but Lu Yinyang was sure that it was Lu Sanyang's eldest or second brother. That was why she came to question Lu Sanyang. Lu Sanyang thought for a moment but did not go out. She closed the door and returned to her room. In the evening, she made a table full of good dishes. There was fish and meat, filling the room with a nice aroma. The door was pushed open and Madame Wei returned to the house angrily. Not long after, Lu Daolong and Lu Erlang returned. Lu Daolong used his eyes to warn Lu Erlang not to talk nonsense. Both of them had washed up, but Lu Erlang walked with a slight limp, and Lu Daolong's hands were a little clumsy. Mr. Lu came back home and entered the house without saying anything. Not long after, Madame Wei came out. Lu Sanyang pretended not to know anything and smiled. Father, mother, eldest brother, second brother, it's time to eat. I made a few good dishes today. You are in for a treat. During the meal, Madame Wei wanted to cry, but she fought it back. She smiled and said, Sanyang's culinary skills have improved again. Lu Dalong smiled. Yes, it's delicious. Lu Erlang had always had a big appetite, but he did not eat much today. The glances he threw at Lu Sanyang were filled with sympathy. Lu Sanyang picked up a piece of fish for Lu Erlang. Second brother, don't you like it the most? Eat more. Lu Erlang hurriedly lowered his head and ate. He thought to himself that even if his sister couldn't get married, there was still him and his eldest brother. If his eldest brother wasn't willing to support her, he would support her. In the future, when he got married, there was only one condition. His wife must be nice to his sister. When his parents were gone, he would keep supporting his sister. If he was gone, his son and grandson would support her as well. Lu Sanyang almost cried. She had enjoyed the love of her family for a lifetime, but she never knew that they had such thoughts. Chapter 67. Arrogant Woman, Part 2, you are listening at novelfull.audio. Chapter 67. Arrogant Woman, Part 2, in her previous life, there were times when she was worried. When she became old, she was afraid that she would be despised by others and did not want to cause trouble for anyone. Gradually, she stopped going out to meet people. Hearing Lu Erlang's thoughts, Lu Sanyang felt really sweet. Lu Sanyang was not worried about making a living. With her excellent embroidery skills, she could easily support herself. She would not be a burden to anyone. When her eldest and second brothers got married, she would live with her parents and serve them. Thinking of this, Lu Sanyang felt relieved. Lu Dalong did not say anything. He only thought to himself. As the eldest brother, with me around, no one can bully my sister. Mr. Lu took a sip of wine and ate his food. He thought to himself. It's not a big deal. I don't want my daughter to get married and leave the family anyway. My wife and I are both healthy and we can definitely live to 100 years. As long as I am alive, I will protect my daughter. Madame Wei was even more determined. She could afford to raise her daughter even if she did not marry for the rest of her life. In the next few days, women came to Madame Wei one after another and told her that they could not matchmake her daughter. When people heard that it was Lu Sanyang, they would shake their heads and say that they didn't want an arrogant daughter. In law like Lu Sanyang. Madame Wei was furious, but she knew that she could not offend the matchmakers. Lu Sanyang did not go out for a long time. Her reputation for being arrogant spread again. She could often hear Madame Wei's thoughts. That old B***tch, Madame Wang, actually dared to slander my daughter behind her back. Doesn't she know what kind of person her grandson is? No matter how much money he earns, it's not enough for him to gamble with. She actually dared to say that my Sanyang standards are too high. Doesn't she know what kind of a scum her grandson is? Lu Shun's mother is not a good person either. Without evidence, she actually accused Dalong of hitting her son. Madame Wei was angry for a long time. In the blink of an eye, it was June. Lu Sanyang became calmer and calmer. During this period of time, she made clothes for each of the family members. After putting on the new clothes, the family was very happy. Lu Sanyang looked at her parents and two brothers who were wearing the new clothes and felt as sweet as honey. Her brother was going to officially marry Tang An and the new clothes came in handy. Madame Wei was also very satisfied. Lu Erlang could not sit still at all. After putting on his new clothes, he went out for a walk. However, in recent days, he had offended many people whom he used to be on good terms with. He could not find anyone to show off his new clothes to. As Lu Erlang walked, he suddenly thought of someone. It just so happened that his family needed a pair of tongs. When Lu Erlang arrived at Chu Yan's blacksmith shop, he stood up straight and asked. Can you make me a pair of tongs? Chu Yan glanced at Lu Erlang and his eyes darkened. Yes. Lu Erlang chuckled. Then make me one. Chu Yan replied calmly. All right. Lu Erlang cleared his throat and went straight to the point. Chu Yan, look at my clothes. Look at this embroidery. It's beautiful, right? Chu Yan looked at Lu Erlang. Lu Erlang was handsome. His clothes were very fitting and nice. It was obvious who made them. Chu Yan looked away. Yes. In his mind, he could picture Lu Sanyang making the clothes with her slender hands. The woman who had once been arrogant in front of him had become the gentle and beautiful Lu Sanyang. Her appearance was already different, but she was still her. He always knew his identity. He was Chu Yan, and also Long Yi. He was here to help her return to the throne. Chu Yan turned around and entered the house. He didn't want to talk to Lu Erlang, but Lu Erlang clearly didn't notice it. He followed behind Chu Yan and said, Chu Yan, let me tell you, my sister has been embroidering for a few months. Everyone in my family has a new set of clothes. The patterns are all different, but I think mine looks the best. Lu Erlang was confident. Do you know why? That's because I'm the most important in Sanyang's heart, so mine is definitely the best. Chu Yan was speechless. He really did not want to talk to this idiot. Chu Yan ignored him, but it did not stop Lu Erlang from showing off. Lu Erlang was different from others. He did not need anyone to respond. What he needed was for others to listen to him. After Lu Erlang was done showing off, he finally changed the topic back to the pair of tongs. Then when you're done making it, I'll come to take it. How much does it cost? Do you want me to pay you first? Chu Yan said calmly, no need. He just wanted Lu Erlang to leave. If he didn't, he'd probably manhandle him out. After showing off, Lu Erlang left in a delightful mood. Chu Yan looked at Lu Erlang's back and narrowed his dark eyes. He closed the door and returned to his home in this world. When Madame Li saw Chu Yan, her heart skipped a beat. He didn't even make a sound when he walked. The woman who was talking to Madame Li looked at Chu Yan with a complicated expression and the corners of her mouth twitched. Madame Li was afraid that he would say something, so she immediately smiled and said, You're back. Are you hungry? If you're hungry, I'll fix you something to eat immediately. Chu Yan did not even look at Madame Li and went straight back into the house. Madame Li patted her chest. She was freaked out. Matchmaker Zhao revealed a confused look. Your child is so extraordinary. Looking. Why do you want him to marry that kind of woman? In my opinion, with your child's looks, he can even marry an official's daughter. Madame Li said she would be satisfied as long as her future daughter-in-law was a woman. Chu Yan had a blacksmith shop, so he naturally made a lot of money. With his conditions, those who were not good enough were not worthy of him. Madame Li smiled and held Matchmaker Zhao's arm. Let me tell you something. My child is crazy. No girls can tolerate him. Although he's good. Looking, there's something wrong with him here. Madame Li pointed at her brain. Matchmaker Zhao couldn't help but ask. What's his problem? Madame Li lowered her voice and said, he is really violent. Although I'm his stepmother, I don't want to see him without anyone by his side for the rest of his life. I just want to find someone who can endure his temper. Chapter 68. 7 Daughters. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Chapter 68. 7 Daughters. Matchmaker Zhao was enlightened. I see. Madame Li nodded. Thank you. Just find him a girl. Any girl will do. Matchmaker Zhao nodded with a smile. Okay. Chu Yan did not come out after returning to the house. Actually, he had heard everything that Madame Li and matchmaker Zhao had discussed. He had come here to make it even with Lu Sanyang. From then on, they would have nothing to do with each other. However, once one entered the mortal world, one could not avoid worldly affairs. Chu Yen knew very well what Madame Li was thinking. He did not take it to heart. Madame Li was just a mortal, so how could she do anything to him? At most, she would only disgust him. Chu Yen retracted his gaze and thought of Lu Erlang's new clothes. He narrowed his eyes and seemed to be able to see Lu Sanyang sitting in the room and embroidering attentively. Her gaze was gentle as she made the clothes one stitch at a time. Her gentleness tugged at his heartstrings. He wanted to help her return to the deity position. She had already awakened her Buddhist heart. If he wanted to help her, he had to be by her side. Becoming her legitimate husband was the most suitable identity for him. She was his. No one was more qualified than him. Chu Yan's eyes looked more determined. In June, the weather became hotter and hotter. Lu Sanyang bought new fabric. Lu Juer's wedding date was set on July 15th. That day was also the Ghost Festival, commonly known as the Half of July. Lu Juer's stepmother chose this date on purpose, but she made it sound nice. She said that Yang Qingshan was an orphan. His parents had died a long time ago. It was said that those who had passed away would come back to visit their family on the Ghost Festival. If Yang Qingshan's parents came back and saw their son getting married, they could rest in peace. Lu Juer cried, begging her stepmother to choose another date, but her stepmother did not agree and even said that Lu Juer was unfilial. No matter what Lu Juer said, she couldn't persuade her stepmother. Lu Sanyang comforted her, telling her that her married life would be very good. Lu Juer was getting married soon, so Lu Sanyang sped up her efforts. She wanted to embroider a set of blankets for Lu Juer to add to her dowry. Lu Juer's father did not care about her dowry, nor did her stepmother. After Lu Fuer, Lu Hui, and Lu Sanyang discussed, they decided to give Lu Juer a set of blankets each. Lu Sanyang even gave her 2 taels of silver. She knew that Lu Juer's life would be smooth sailing, but the first few years would be too tough. In her previous life, she had been plagued by rumors and didn't dare to go out. Now, she had gotten over it. After Wei Shilai disguised himself, he came to Willow Street to pay a visit to Lu Sanyang. Lu Sanyang heard a knock on the door and went to open it. When she saw Wei Shilai, she was stunned for a moment before smiling. "Sir, please come in." Wei Shilai walked into the courtyard. He took a look at the clean courtyard and knew that Lu Sanyang was a very good girl. Lu Sanyang brought a stool for Wei Shilai to sit on. After Wei Shilai sat down, Lu Sanyang went to fetch tea. Wei Shilai looked at Lu Sanyang and said hesitantly, "Miss Lu, I'm here to ask for your help." Lu Sanyang smiled. "Sir, feel free to tell me. I'll help if I can." Wei Shilai smiled. "Miss Lu, there's a case that I need your help with." Lu Sanyang listened quietly. She nodded and gestured for Wei Shilai to continue. As long as she could help, she would. Wei Shilai sighed and said, "Miss Lu, the situation is like this. A man died in River Village in Yong County. He was drowned in a river. After the autopsy, the coroner said that it wasn't a homicide. However, the strange thing was that many small handprints were on his body. The man was dead, but when we stood beside his body, we could hear some painful screams. We asked the entire village, but couldn't find anyone suspicious. Noel.N. This man's mother insisted that her daughter.in.law killed her son. We investigated the daughter.in.law and found her quite unlikely to be the murderer. But his mother has been camping outside the county government office, saying that if we didn't give her son justice, she would live outside the government office for the rest of her life. The justice she wants is to execute her daughter.in.law. Wei Shilai frowned when he finished speaking. How could he execute an innocent person? Officer Zhou told me after the investigation that the man often hit his wife. The woman gave birth to 7 daughters but could not give birth to a son. Therefore, the man felt very embarrassed. The woman had a motive for killing, but she couldn't have done it. She was busy all day. Her 7th daughter had just been born and needed to be taken care of. The man was often away from home and went out in the middle of the night. The woman didn't dare ask him about it. If she did, she would get beaten. When they interrogated the woman only shook her head and said that it was not her. She did not dare to. When they mentioned the man, the woman was extremely fearful. Officer Zhou had been an official for many years, so he could tell if someone was being genuine or not. The woman wasn't lying. She really didn't dare. The prints on the man's dead body were children's handprints. They couldn't find any clues, so the case fell into a deadlock. Wei Shilai thought of Lu Sanyang and came to ask her for help. After Wei Shilai finished speaking, Lu Sanyang asked him. "Is that man's body still at the government office? Can I go take a look at it before giving you an answer?" Wei Shilai nodded. "Sure, thank you, Miss Lu." Lu Sanyang stood up and followed Wei Shi out. Inside the government office. When Lu Sanyang arrived at the morgue, Lin Zheng and Officer Zhou were looking forward to her arrival. Lin Zheng said respectfully to Lu Sanyang, "Miss Lu." Officer Zhou smiled. "Miss Lu, with you around, I'm confident that this case will be solved." Lu Sanyang walked towards the corpse covered in a white cloth. After walking into the morgue, she heard a moaning voice as if the person was being tortured and was in extreme pain. Lu Sanyang pulled open the white cloth. The man's expression was pained, and there were many small handprints on his upper body. Wei Shilai walked to Lu Sanyang's side and said, "There are more on his back." It was as if the man was pressed down by many children and had drowned in the river. However, how could children have the strength to hold a grown man down and drown him in a river? It seemed unlikely. Lu Sanyang closed her eyes and quietly explored. As soon as she started sensing, Wei Shilai stopped talking, and Lin Zheng and Officer Zhou held their breaths. Zhu Zongyang, on the other hand, was confused. Chapter 69. He deserved to die. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Chapter 69. He deserved to die. Lu Sanyang seemed to be in another time and space. She slowly said, "I saw that he often hit his wife and daughters. He has 6 daughters, but he doesn't like them. His 6 daughters were all killed by him. He didn't care at all. After his 7th daughter was born, when he heard that it was a daughter, he smothered his newborn daughter to death on the spot." Lu Sanyang opened her eyes and ignored the cries for help. Lu Sanyang took 2 steps back and looked at Wei Shilai. "He's a murderer. He killed his 7 daughters. He has a heavy sin on him. His death is caused by karma and has nothing to do with others." Wei Shilai was shocked to hear that this man had killed his 7 daughters. Zhu Zongyang couldn't help but speak up. "You must be mistaken. It's impossible. His mother said that the first 6 children died of illness. The 7th daughter is 2 months old and is still alive." Wei Shilai came back to his senses. Assistant Zhu is right. The 7th daughter is still alive. When we went to investigate, we heard a baby crying and his wife immediately went to coax the child. Lu Sanyang looked at Wei Shilai and said firmly, "She's dead. She was killed by her father the moment she was born. As for why she came back to life, I'm not sure." In the man's memory, she could see very clearly that the man did not like daughters. He had 6 daughters and not a single son. He felt embarrassed by his wife. Therefore, when he heard that the youngest was also a daughter, he stifled her with a pillow without even thinking. The woman had just given birth and was extremely weak. She kowtowed to the man, hoping that he would show some mercy to his own daughter. However, the man was unmoved. With a fierce expression, he pressed the pillow down. When he let go, the child was already dead. Then the man cursed in disgust. Useless old woman. With that, he left. He drank and gambled and was often away from home. One night, he suddenly woke up because he heard the cries of a baby. He was afraid and felt like an evil ghost was chasing him. He ran to the river and fell in. As if someone was holding him down, he couldn't get out of the water. And it was exactly his 7 daughters who were drowning him in the river. They pressed him down hard, just as he had once held them down. Bit by bit, the man stopped breathing. Slowly, he lost the strength to struggle. Therefore, Lu Sanyang was very sure that his 7th daughter was dead. Zhu Zongyang laughed sarcastically. How can a dead person come back to life? Miss Lu, you're wrong this time. But it's understandable because you are still young. No one responded to Zhu Zongyang. Wei Shilai's expression was solemn. Miss Lu, when we went there 2 days ago, his 7th daughter was indeed alive. He felt a headache coming on. How could the dead come back to life? Lu Sanyang was also a little confused, but her intuition told her that this was not a good thing. After thinking for a while, she said, Sir, can I see that woman, her daughter, and the man's mother? Wei Shilai agreed without thinking. Of course. Before this case is closed, everyone in this family is a suspect. Even the man's mother was a suspect. Wei Shilai glanced at the man's corpse. Lu Sanyang seemed to know what he was thinking. She said calmly, he deserves to die. He deserves it. The reason why the man was in pain was because his soul was imprisoned in his body. It kept experiencing the pain when the man drowned and could not break free. Zhu Zongyang's eyes widened. He could not believe that Lu Sanyang would say such a thing. What was more shocking was that Wei Shilai actually agreed with Lu Sanyang. He said coldly, if he really killed 7 daughters with his own hands, he definitely deserves to die. Everyone thought death was the end, but it wasn't. Death was the beginning of the trial. No one could escape the trial. After leaving the morgue, Zhu Zongyang looked back and shivered. The man's hand had fallen out and was twisted as if he wanted to grab something. Zhu Zongyang felt his blood run cold and immediately quickened his pace. It was too strange. The man's mother lived in the government office, while the man's wife was at home with her 7th daughter. When Wei Shilai brought Lu Sanyang over, she was shouting. God, why did my son die so miserably? I want justice for my son. Is there no justice in this world anymore? My poor son, you must be very angry that the murderer has gotten away. Don't worry, I'll definitely seek justice for you. If this official doesn't handle this case properly, I'll hang myself at the entrance of the government office. When they heard that she was going to hang herself, the 2 officers guarding her were shocked. There was really nothing they could do about an old woman who was unreasonable and rude. When Wei Shilai arrived, the 2 officers immediately bowed respectfully. Greetings, sir. Wei Shilai nodded and gestured for them to open the door. The officer frowned. Be careful, sir. She's very cranky. Wei Shilai looked at the scratches on the officer's face and his face darkened. He nodded. Open it. When the door opened, the old woman stopped shouting. When she saw that it was Wei Shilai, she restrained herself. Sir, when are you going to execute that B*TCH? That B*TCH is a jinx. Ever since she married into our family has been in trouble. Not only did she fail to give birth to a son, but she even killed my son. Such a woman should be cut into pieces. Wei Shilai glanced at her. It's not for you to decide who is the murderer. All you need to do is answer my questions truthfully. The old woman immediately nodded. As long as I can avenge my son, I will definitely cooperate. Wei Shilai looked at her. Then tell me the truth. How did your previous 6 granddaughters die? The old woman was stunned. She composed herself and said firmly, "Didn't I tell you already? They died of illness." Chapter 70. River Village. You are listening at NovelFull.audio. Chapter 70. River Village. After saying that, the old woman narrowed her eyes and raised her voice. "As an official, don't you even know how to investigate a case? I asked you to investigate my son's death. Why are you talking so much nonsense? Let me tell you, if you can't get justice for my son, I'll crawl to the capital and report it to the imperial court." The old woman spoke hysterically and her saliva was spraying everywhere. She hid it well, but Wei Shilai could tell she was guilty of something. Coupled with what Lu Sanyang had told him, Wei Shilai was furious. It was obvious that the 7 girls were killed by their father. Noel Deren, that was 7 lives, living beings. No wonder Lu Sanyang said that the man deserved to die. Such a person deserved to die. Even if he died 100 times, it would not be enough. Wei Shilai was extremely angry. He gritted his teeth, and asked. Did they really die of illnesses? Lying is a serious offense. The old woman was stunned. She placed her hands on her hips. Of course they died of illness. They died a long time ago. I think you're just a stupid official. You don't know how to investigate at all. You are not checking what you should. I don't think you can find justice for my son. Get out of the way. I'm leaving. If you can't help my son, I'll look for someone who can. The old woman turned around and wanted to walk out. Wei Shilai gave Lin Jing a look, and Lin Jing stopped the old woman from leaving. Wei Shilai said coldly, "What kind of place do you think the government office is? Do you think you can come and go as you please? I've found enough evidence to suspect that you've murdered 7 people. Before the case is closed, you don't get to go anywhere." The woman raised her hand threateningly. "You evil officials, you are abusing power." "Oh my God, the evil official is trying to kill me." Lin Jing grabbed her hand and subdued her. Wei Shilai was already certain that the man had killed his 7 daughters, and the man's mother was his accomplice. How ruthless was she to help her son kill 7 innocent girls? Wei Shilai asked the officers to take the old woman away. How can there be such an evil person? Officer Zhou's eyes were a little red. He could not imagine what kind of fear and despair those 7 little lives had experienced. Officer Zhou lost his daughter and had been searching for her for so many years. He would always remember the child's tiny face and crystal eyes. They were the best in the world. At the thought of the dead man and his mother, Officer Zhou gritted his teeth in anger and felt sick. "Miss Lu, that woman is still living in the village with her 7th daughter. She will definitely arrive very late. How about I get someone to pick you up tomorrow morning?" Wei Shilai recalled what Lu Sanyang had said earlier and frowned. The 7th daughter, who was already dead, had come back to life. What should he do with her? Just thinking about it made him feel extremely troubled. Lu Sanyang shook her head. "There's no need to wait until tomorrow. Let's go now. I'm afraid something will happen if I wait until tomorrow." Lu Sanyang had a strong feeling that she could not wait. Seeing how serious Lu Sanyang was, Wei Shilai's heart skipped a beat. He immediately prepared the carriage and headed to River Village. Soon, Lu Sanyang followed Wei Shilai to River Village. The village was 7 miles away from Yong County, so by the time they returned, it'd be very late. Wei Shilai looked at Lu Sanyang. She had changed in her temperament. Ever since the last time, he could tell that Lu Sanyang had been enlightened with Taoism, but she didn't seem to realize it. Lin Jing looked at Lu Sanyang with great respect, and so did Officer Zhou. Wei Shilai recalled his colleague suggesting that he recruit Lu Sanyang as an assistant. In the future, if he encountered a difficult case, he could ask Lu Sanyang for help. Since she was destined to take the path, why not make best use of her power? Wei Shilai decided to find an opportunity to mention it to Lu Sanyang. There was a reward for being an assistant of the government. With this reward, even if she did not marry for the rest of her life, Lu Sanyang would still be able to live well. Lu Sanyang heard everything that was going through Wei Shilai's mind. Her expression did not change, but she was thinking about it. It was not a bad idea if she really took this path. With the money, her life would be better. Her parents would not have to worry too much about her in the future. When they arrived at River Village, the carriage could only stop at the entrance. A small river blocked them, so they could only park the carriage by the side of the road, leaving an officer to guard it. The rest of them crossed the river to the other side. Lin Zheng Officer Zhou walked in front while Wei Shilai walked beside Lu Sanyang. "Miss Lu, this river is where the man was drowned. Most villagers in River Village have the surname Niu. The man who was drowned was called Niu Laoda. He was the only son of his family." Lu Sanyang looked at the river and frowned, but she said nothing. Seeing Lu Sanyang frown, Wei Shilai was nervous. "Miss Lu, are you all right?" Lu Sanyang looked at the village in the distance and asked. "Sir, in your eyes, what is justice?" Wei Shilai did not know why Lu Sanyang suddenly asked this. He looked in the direction Lu Sanyang was looking. It was River Village. He felt that Lu Sanyang seemed to have seen something, which he could not see it. Wei Shilai looked at Lu Sanyang and said word by word, "Miss Lu, in my eyes, justice is to not let the bad off and help the good." As a county magistrate, he often encountered cases where right and wrong were ambiguous. Sometimes, the victims were the evil people, and the criminals were just seeking justice for themselves. In such cases, justice became a confusing word.